Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, Management Committee members of the Canadian Business Council, my full compliments to the full team. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and privilege to be an integral part of this interesting evening. Doha Bank is in existence for the last 40 years. We have been operating in Toronto for the last 5.5 years. With the changing face of the world, we thought it's appropriate to set in our footprints across the globe where Qatar has got economic linkage. We recognized in 2002 globalization is redefining the space. Re-regulation is going to make extraordinary changes in terms of financial services. Technology and consumerism is converging in substance, and financial modeling was getting redefined. Wherever Qatar has got economic linkage, we started our operations. One such destination is Canada, and we have bilateral opportunities growing between these two blocks. When I was talking to Ahmed a couple of days before, he was asking me in specific terms, we'll make this session more interactive and interesting. He also was insistent that with the change in global economics, what sort of reorganization required in the business space for us to recognize. I was in International Monetary Fund meeting in Bali in October last year. Extraordinary set of deliberations, recognizing the global growth is truly at stake. Globalization has become economic neutralization. When we recognized 10 years before the financial services is truly at stake on account of liquidity, the housing market collapse in the US, allied implications across liquidity in the banking system. It was not confined to liquidity alone. Liquidity has moved from, in real order, for financial economies to funding, solvency and sovereign issues. Countries and continents who have lived beyond their means have to pay a heavy price in reorganizing the financial modeling. Deregulation was confined to re-regulation. The capital rules were redefined, Basel II to Basel III, where financial leverage has to be well moderated. Financial economies are still, even after 10 years, converting as real. Real economies are redefining the scope and performance. Communism is still changing. Capitalism is altering its form and substance. Mixed economies are changing their business model as well. Technology in the digital space is a bigger opportunity, and convergence of technology and business model gives the consumer the convenience. And every business model is getting redefined. Your lifestyle is changing. Your workplace is getting redefined. Business process outsourcing, knowledge process outsourcing, digital convergence and financial inclusion has been the new world order. The Millennium Development Goal is a main thrust in the whole world. How to bring in global prosperity, global sustainability in terms of overall economic momentum. How do we eradicate extreme poverty? How do we make sure gender equality comes in? How do we ensure universal health care and education is the right footprint? How do we build this partnership to recognize global warming and climate change is not an ordinary issue. It's going to have direct impact in your economics, not necessarily confined to ecology. The convergence of economics and ecology is vital for us to see through. We have a sustainable world. It means you have to build this partnership in a bigger scale, recognizing all these challenges. The world at large has to converge in terms of politics and economics. That was the drive. The agenda which was set in Bali was in disarray in substance. Even after 10 years, the global growth is less than 3.7%. Advanced economies still grossly underperforming. In aggregate terms, advanced economies are going to produce around 2.1%. America is said to be recovering. They had 3 interest rate hikes last year. They are still in store. By quantitative easing, improving the money supply, transcending hot money across the borders, the stock market was recovering. Housing market was recovering. In substance, inflation was set in. Unemployment was coming down. Overall economic momentum was converging in the United States. Then they started unwinding the quantitative easing. Trillions of dollars have been pumped into the global economy by Federal Reserve. America printed money. Bank of England printed money. European Central Bank, where there's no political union, but definitely there is a monetary union. By design, it's a bigger challenge. Converging in terms of inflation or interest rate or money supply is not the only solution. By birth, by this design, there are stagnation in real order. If all these global giants can print money, Bank of Japan has to come out of the technical recession. They started inventing Abenomics in 2012. Essentially, how do we ensure we unwind the additional money supply, which was an administrative, accommodative monetary policy? That was a bigger challenge for global technicians, technocrats, or central bankers. And again, with the new American administrations, you have a different set of challenge. Global trade hitherto was a free trade, contentious though, between developed world and developing world. The new administration had a different spell. Today, truly, lack of convergence between politics and economics is disrupting global trade. Gone are the days prior to the crisis where we had double of the GDP as global trade. Now, it's not even 3.7%. That's the economic momentum we talked about. Double-digit growth we used to have in global trade between 2001 to 2007. Global economies were poising for an extraordinary set of alliance between trade and investments, and financial service was of great momentum. Every economy, in recognition of the fact there has to be a free trade, was redefining their economic momentum. Now, in the last 10 years, we had stagnation. And in the last 2 years, especially, when Trans-Pacific Partnership was rescinded, when North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement was completely redefined, contentious tariffs were levied between China and US, you have a huge stagnation in terms of global trade. And that needs to be resolved to start with. Additional tariffs over $250 billion on steel and aluminum and other essentials by Americans to China. In retaliation again, hundreds of billions of dollars from China is not a solution. Extraordinary set of convergence is required between these two world largest economies. We recognize this. If you look at the economic momentum in real order, America is slowing down. 2.5% is a number costed. Leave alone interest rate, inflation, money supply, and again, the overall jobless claims, which are improving. But real growth has come down from 2.9 to 2.5% for year 2019. Brexit, as we speak, is going through extraordinary contention. And yesterday night, you have seen the reflection of Commons. And it is going to be a huge stagnation for United Kingdom. And UK is supposed to do, with all this roadblocks, not more than 1.5%. European economy, again, it's going to be less than 2%, 1.9%. Japan, which was coasting over 1% now, is 0.9% is the prediction. Now, in total terms, if you look at it, the economic engine of the world today still incrementally lies in the hands of emerging markets. India, as a functional democracy, is supposed to be it is slowing down, first of all, and is supposed to produce not more than 7.4%. China, gone are the days when we had over 9% for over 30 years. Now it's going to be 6.2%. When it comes to Brazil, 2.4%. Russia, 1.8%. South Africa, 1.4%. In aggregate terms, emerging economies are not going to perform more than 4.7%. Essentially, slow growth in emerging economies is disrupting the global growth as well. When it comes to Africa, North Africa, Afghanistan, Pakistan put together, the growth is not going to be more than 2.7%. The situation looks bleak in substance. Global growth, if we have to redefine, there has to be reorganization in terms of, or transformation in terms of substance between politics and economics. That's the message. Within the Gulf definition, the blockade was of a major disruption for everyone. The United Force as Gulf Cooperation Council over the 40 years, which was setting the footprint for customs unions. To a large extent, they were converging on the currency union, is also at stake. We have seen the reflection in the last 1.5 years, Qatar's wisdom in terms of, as a country of substance and great substantive compliance, I should say, has been reliant in terms of self-sufficiency. The economic matrix, in real order, if you look at it, it is giving us a true reflection of governance and convergence of politics, economics, and social governance. In real order, Qatar should be reporting $204 billion US. That's measurable, manageable, and that could be a current account as well, fiscal surplus. When we had run on the banks in June 2017, it was an extraordinary experience for everyone. We have showcased twice, both in 2017 as well as 18, to the diplomatic community, what sort of reorganization required, what sort of initiatives taken by this government, and essentially reinforcement in terms of brand equity. Globally, Qatar got recognized as a country of great commitment to the entire humanity and human dignity. In terms of economics, we have seen the reinforcement in multiple forms. And that's what I want to showcase in the coming slides. Let me showcase some of the pictures which will enlighten you to recognize we are in the right governance. We are in a country which is set to greater prospects for years to come. Is it on? Okay. Let me recall the global growth. inclusive growth. That's the solution. That's what we need to articulate time and again. Building this partnership, building in terms of trade or investments, banking or finance is the necessity. Now, on the trade disruption, we also
No
have
president should pound the table and demand he gets his way, or else the government shuts down.
Build that wall! If we don't have border security, we'll shut down the government.
As the partial government shutdown enters week 3.
The president's reiterating he wants more than $5 billion for a wall.
If we got $5 billion, we could do a tremendous chunk of wall.
We're not doing a wall.
Thousands and thousands of government workers didn't do anything. They work for the museums, they work for the parks, they work for the FBI, and they're the ones that are going to be punished.
Well, we're here because I'm not allowed to work due to the government shutdown. Just have to wait till things open back up and use up our savings or whatever else we have to do to keep things moving along.
We work in one of the busiest airspaces in the country. We're being told to come to work. We don't know when we're going to be paid. Very frustrating. No one to pick it up.
They only have funded the SNAP program through January, and we're talking 38 million Americans, obviously many of them low income and poor, and they've never been in a situation like this where it risked being cut off immediately.
We could call a national emergency and build it very quickly.
I think the president would be wide open to a court challenge saying, where's the emergency?
It's a tremendous problem.
It is a tremendous problem. I was sitting at the dinner table with Ambassador of Qatar, Ivana, and we had, this is the only talk. U.S. shut down. Though the scale is not material, 5.7 billion, it's contentious in terms of principle-centered values. And that's a disruption for U.S. economy. Just to showcase lack of convergence in real order between politics and economics in every part of the world. Looking at Brexit.
Over the last 2 years, we have, of course, been talking with MPs about the issues that they want to see raised, the issues that they've been concerned about, and the process that what I've been doing over the last few weeks, over the Christmas and New Year period, is having heard MPs in December in the debate, taking those issues to the European Union. And we have, you say we haven't achieved, we have achieved this exchange of letters, which gives those further clarifications, which gives those further assurances, which I believe do give that further confidence to members of Parliament about the future relationship we'll have with the European Union and about both sides not wanting to use the backstop. But you talk about Parliament taking control. What I think is important is that we deliver on the result of the referendum. And what I'm concerned about from what we've seen, as I've said in my speech over the last few days, is the real prospect that we could see a sort of stymie in Parliament, or Parliament operating, or people in Parliament trying to operate in a way that frustrates Brexit. We have a duty to deliver Brexit, and that's what I and the government want to do, and it's what we are going to do, and I want MPs to recognise that as well.
It's interesting. So look at the disruption in terms of, you switch on any television, this has been the showcase now. It has to be resolved in substance. Now,
Round 2 of this trade war between the US and China marks a serious escalation in a battle that has dragged on for months. With much bigger numbers, the US will hit Chinese imports with duties on $200 billion worth of imports. China will hit back with duties on $60 billion worth of imports into China from the United States. And perhaps more seriously, trade talks have now been scrapped.
A sense of cautious optimism after the last meeting between US and Chinese representative. Let's hope it gets resolved in the coming days. Now, Qatar. It's vital in terms of recognition of the fact economic development, human development, environment development all have to come together to make sure your concerted vision in terms of 2030 is accomplished. And that's what the pillars are all about. And it is in the right direction. We have seen not only a long-term vision in terms of 2030, the National Development Strategy has been well defined, and allied implications we are seeing in terms of hydrocarbon as well as non-hydrocarbon activities. In terms of central bank reassurance, this is what the Central Bank Governor, His Excellency Sheikh Abdullah bin Saud, has said. In July, it's business as usual. I was showcasing in August 2017, the rating agencies were downgrading Qatar's economic outlook, and the country's reserves were depleting. Central bank had nearly 14 billion was the exodus in the first month. Over $43 billion was the money sent out from Qatar between June to September 2017. Now the reserves are back in track. We have the local market liquidity has improved. There were credit rationing in terms of repatriations, especially through exchange companies. We moderated the outflows, rightfully so. When you have free foreign exchange in terms of exchange controls, we have to recognize that there were onshore, offshore attempts by the enemy countries and institutions to destabilize Qatar's exchange parity. And that has costed dearly the overall market domination in terms of investments. And that's precisely the reason punitive actions have been taken by Qatar Central Bank, and everything is coming to terms. Reserves, now Qatar Central Bank reserve stands at $46.5 billion, plus in terms of sovereign funds invested in global market, multiple markets and multiple sectors are very supportive of the overall financial stability. If you look at the exchange reserves, as I mentioned, it's back in track. The recent visit by the Secretary of State from the United States should give us some sense of optimism.
Did great work as well. Your country's been a great friend to the United States in many ways.
We're all more powerful when we're working together, when disputes are limited, and when we have common challenges in the region and around the world. Disputes between countries that have a shared objective are never helpful. They never permit you to have as robust and powerful a response to common adversaries or common challenges.
Moving on. The immigration laws have been redefined now. In addition to 80 countries, now China is also, the Chinese can get visa on arrival. That's another interesting development. And Qatar economy, as I mentioned, should run in current account surplus with 13% as a percentage of GDP, if in rather 6.5% if you look at the overall economic momentum. Inflation is a concern, as stemming at 3.5%. The growth is around 2.8%, reporting over $204 billion, predominantly on the non-hydrocarbon. There are hydrocarbon growth as well, which is going to be a planned outlay.
A new tax in Qatar has
sin
doubled
tax.
the price of alcohol, among other things. The tax, which is nicknamed the sin tax by some of Qatar's residents, took effect at the beginning of the year. The country's General Authority of Customs said the duty was implemented on goods that the state deems harmful to human health and the environment.
If you look at the fiscal breakdown, the The government expenditure is in the right balance. VAT has been postponed. And we have seen business competitive index is improving. World Economic Forum has redefined Qatar's ranking. It's moving up in terms of overall competitive offerings. What is important is to balance the budget, and that's precisely the attempt now. And I'll give the breakdown.
Qatar is the world's largest exporter of liquefied natural gas. It currently produces around 77 million tonnes a year, and production levels are set to increase.
We will increase our LNG production capacity from 77 million tonnes per annum to 100 million tonnes per annum, which represents a 30% increase that will start 5 to 7 years from now.
As a planned expansion, and that's going to stimulate the overall sustainable revenue stream. We have countries like Bangladesh, we started with 1.5 million metric ton, now it's scaling up. Pakistan is going to be a recipient of LNG as well. The diversity as well as the distribution Qatar has got in terms of natural gas is cost effective for importing countries. And overall economic momentum, if you look at it, it's a long-term revenue, whether it's Japan or South Korea or Singapore or India or UK or the rest of the world now recognizes Qatar's distribution strategy and diversification, as I said, is quite meaningful instead of importing from the rest of the world. And in addition, Qatar is also drilling offshore, right? Countries like Mexico is a major investment partnership and joint venture. So plenty of reasons to believe Qatar's economic sustenance is going to be a value advantage. The rating agencies now has given a clear mandate now. Gone are the days when by this time last year we had outlook negative, even though the country's rating was AA. The outlook was testified in real order because of the overall drain in the systems and the impending operational plan A to plan B conversion was a major challenge. So they were skeptical about casting judgment, and they waited for 6 months to pass through. Subsequently, including S&P, in December, they've recasted their outlook to be stable. That's a welcome change, because if you look at the credit default swap rate, it was very wild when we had the blockade just commenced. And the impending challenge for the financial institution is to recognize that we have to borrow from the international market at a high cost. And the maturities were not getting auto-renewal, and we have to pay a heavy price in terms of liquidity procurement. Now it's put to rest. World at large has recognized, in terms of financial stability, there is an absolute model, and it is measurable, manageable, and controllable. Qatar's financial stability is going to be in order. The new investment law. It's quite liberal in terms of overall investment climate, and relative to the rest of the Gulf states. If you look at it, it has got very strong liberal incentives to attract foreign direct investments. So once it gets endorsed in total terms, I'm sure there will be more inflow of investments. Permanent residency law, it is not an ordinary one. So this is going to have additional advantage in terms of influx of more people, and even existing peoples can invest within Qatar. That's going to help us to improve the local market. Food security was a major challenge. Let's see how it gets resolved. Most of you must have visited the Baladna factory as such. It is state of the art, and it's a tourist destination now. It's interesting, and the Australian ambassador is looking forward to import more Australian cows. Interesting. Now, it's in terms of self-sufficiency, it's over 94%. That's very promising again. And we financed the water conservation project. It's whether in terms of essentials, progressive initiatives have been responded well, and we are seeing clearly the government commitment towards food security. South food has been very promising. The CEO has to say something.
حصار الجار تاريخ لا يمكن أن ينسى، تاريخ 5/6. بالنسبة لي لا يمكن أن أنسى هذا التاريخ، لأن كان هذا تاريخ أول يوم دوام لي في شركة حصاد كرئيس تنفيذي. داومت مباشرة يوم الحصار. تم استدعائنا كحصاد للاجتماع مع الحكومة لدراسة موضوع التحديات اللي تواجه توفير المواد الغذائية في هذه الفترة بسبب الحصار، حيث أن أغلب المواد كانت تجي عن طريق الحدود البرية، المواد الغذائية الرئيسية، وتم إغلاق هذه الحدود بدون إنذار. طبعا بالنسبة لنا كحصاد ما كان عندنا اختيار ان احنا نفكر ناخذ المهمة وما ناخذ المهمة. طلعنا من الاجتماع على يقين 100% ان احنا راح نأدي. كان عندنا ايمان كامل ان احنا راح نأدي وراح نسد النقص والعجز في اسرع وقت ممكن، لان الموضوع موضوع قطر.
We have seen the progressive mission and execution as well. And when we showcased in September last year about the various plans, it was very constructive. It was evident that Qatar is in the right direction in terms of food security.
As Qatar continues to
Free zone.
advance its standing on the world stage, the government has developed a number of programs to enhance and diversify the economy, including the Ras Bafontes Special Economic Zone, developed by the state-owned Manatech Economic Zones Company to encourage both local and foreign private investment.
It's very promising again. If you look at the space and the infrastructure getting done, it's going to be an extraordinary opportunities for cost-effective production as well as distribution. So bigger opportunity for international investors to come in, set up their infrastructure, bring in their cost-effective labor, and ensuring their overall space is quite competitive. Metro. Interesting. Lusail Smart City is another beauty, shaping up well.
مدينة لوسيل حاليا هي تعتبر مدينة ذكية. الهدف الرئيسي التزامنا نحو الدولة ونحو المستثمرين ونحو المشروع أن تكون عندنا بنية تحتية قوية.
مبدأ المدينة الذكية مبدأ مهم وشيء تم مراعاته من بداية التصاميم، أن توفر حياة أفضل وأسهل لمستخدمين المدينة والساكنين في المدينة.
In the smart city vision, we have got different aspects, such as smart education, smart mobility, smart e-health, smart operations, smart maintenance, smart utilities.
Infrastructure has been a state of the art. Those who visited Lusail City, and if you look at the bigger picture in terms of real estate, there are oversupply in terms of office space. Otherwise, in terms of residential space, there is a reduction in the rent. Between 10 to 15% we have seen in our cash flows. Land designated for social entrepreneurship or international investors is cost effective. When it comes to free zone, it's a bigger opportunity for everyone to leverage. Overall, construction and real estate is holding good, unlike the neighbors. Yes. Yes, this is the last slide of it. I know you have just got a lot of questions to ask. I'm getting set. That's right, yes. Yeah. So that's the bigger picture in terms of Qatar.